let's talk about this discussion that happened with Briahna Joy Gray and Krystal Ball. So, this was quite a revealing moment for Krystal Ball, I would say. We did talk about this over at RBN earlier today. I do want to break this down a bit because I feel like this is exactly what I was trying to tell you guys about Reformist. They're only willing to go so far. So the name of this video is, Will a Progressive Challenge Biden in 2024? And they get into the conversation of third parties, who would be best to challenge Joe Biden. And there are a couple of things that are said here, I think, on Krystal Ball's part, that I think is incredibly revealing. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start at this point here, 3 minutes and 5 seconds.
Joe Biden. And my concern is that given all of the fractures that we've seen on the left since Bernie dropped out in 2020, whether it's about force to vote or any of these force to vote adjacent skirmishes that have happened since then, that there's not a guarantee that any candidate, even if they're running against Joe Biden, who's obviously to the right of anybody a progressive would even consider voting for, any progressive that announced at this point would not have the guarantee of full-throated support from the left the way that Bernie did in 2016 and 2020.
Let's talk about that. This piece, I think, is incredibly important, especially if you do want to still do the inside strategy in reference to the president election. It is going to be very difficult for someone coming after Bernie Sanders to get that same amount of support. I'm talking like, I went to Bernie's rally here in Boston. There were over 10,000 people there. Okay. It is going to be very difficult. Bernie Sanders, even though he was running a grassroots campaign, he had the most money. He had the most individual donor amounts. I donated a lot of money to Bernie Sanders. You guys have heard me talk about this before, often on this show. And I said, Bernie owes me a refund and owes you one too. But when I think about another candidate trying to fill that slot, are they going to be able to get that same type of energy and that same type of, just the enthusiasm that Bernie supporters had in 2016 and 2020? I can't see, and they're going to mention this in a second, I cannot see a Marianne Williamson getting that type of energy. I can't see Marianne Williamson getting people that enthused the way that Bernie Sanders did. And this is not a dig at Marianne Williamson. She's been on this show multiple times. I think that there are certain issues that Marianne is really good on, but I also think there's some issues that Marianne is not too great on. And those are concerning if you are going to be president of the United States. So I think whoever comes after Bernie Sanders is going to have a bigger challenge, because even though Bernie may have opened the door, right? The problem that they're going to face is that the fact that Bernie opened the door, but he didn't deliver in the end. In the end, Bernie Sanders left his movement and said, vote for Joe Biden. And the squad members followed along with him. In the end, the squad members, they did not come through. They didn't force the vote. So the problem is the examples that have come before them. So anyone coming after Bernie is going to have a more difficult time, not to mention the DNC. They have learned how to adjust their strategy now. So for the next progressive running for president, they're going to be ready for it. More ready than they were when Bernie Sanders ran. So they will have more of a difficult time. But I think the point that Bree mentions here is incredibly important. How do you get that energy again? How? You tell people you're leading a revolution, a movement across the country, and then you bail? How do you get that again? Imagine if MLK said, all right, look, they've been sicking dogs on us. They've beaten us. They've thrown us into jail. That's it. We're not going to try to do this anymore. Imagine if Martin Luther King Jr. said that. Imagine. Some people like me, we'd still be sitting at the back of the bus. I bet you. I bet. So let's go back in.
And I look at someone like Marianne and I see how the alliances that have happened would pick at various aspects of her foreign policy stance, would have issues with some of the, statements she's made about various public officials that have died, a certain approach to certain kind of Silicon Valley types that, she might have a personal little knowledge or relationship with. And there are some people who say, well, don't make the perfect be the enemy of the good. She's obviously so superior to Joe Biden that I can overlook any number of things. And there's other people who have been burned so badly who look to someone like Nina Turner and think, well, she tried twice her way. She didn't learn a lesson about how to break free of the Democratic Party. They feel that she bent her knee on certain policy issues and certain messaging issues that speak to how she would also legislate if she were to win, and therefore are more distrustful than they would have been immediately in the wake of Bernie Sanders. And I wonder, do you think that is something that is surmountable?
So I think it is a real risk. I mean, with regard to Nina, just because I love her, I have to stand up for her and say, I think the idea, which has been floated, that like if she ran third party, she would have had a better chance in this district is ludicrous.
Let's pause this for just for a second. I want you to pay attention to something that Krystal just said right off the bat. This is the problem.
I think it is a real risk. I mean, with regard to Nina, just because I love her, I have to stand up for her and say,
because I love her, I have to stand up for her. This is why you can't be friends with you can't be friends with them. You can't be friends. You see the problem? You're afraid to criticize them in the way that you should, in the way that they should be criticized, because that's your friend and you don't want to hurt your friend's feelings and you still want to have access to your friend. It's easier for me because I'm not friends with them. I'm not friends with Nina Turner. I'm not friends with Bernie Sanders. I'm not friends with Marianne's been on the show, but we're not friends. You see the difference? Let's let Krystal go on.
I think the idea, which has been floated, that like if she ran third party, she would have had a better chance in this district is ludicrous. I mean, this was a district that likes Democrats. And actually the biggest problem for her, especially in her first run when she came a lot closer, was her like voting for Joe Biden is like eating half a bowl of shit. Like that was a real issue for her in that primary. So I think Nina is as like true and sound and solid a warrior as it possibly gets. Something
But warriors, I think we're going a bit far here to say that Nina Turner is a warrior, because a warrior wouldn't have felt that they needed to let me go ahead and pivot closer to the moderate lane because that's how the district is. A warrior would have just said what they were going to say regardless. She pivoted closer to the moderate lane and she still lost. So what does that tell you? And I've seen this happen multiple times before where these progressive, quote unquote, progressive leftist candidates feel that they need to move closer to the center in order to win. And I've seen that happen multiple times and they continue to lose. So I don't know why this strategy is still being used. So I would not call her a warrior. I'm sorry. No, let's not go that route. This is why you can't be friends with the politicians. This is important for people to know.
That out there is why.
The issue wasn't, I mean, some people obviously would have liked her to run third party, but I think more of the issue is whether or not she should have leaned more into that messaging and not tried to say, campaign with Bakari Sellers or these people who have been open and hostile enemies of the left. And what the approach should have been to some of the anti-Semitic.
I would love it to be a world where in every district, like leaning into the lefty anti-establishment position was the winning position. I just don't think that was that district. I mean, this was a district that loved Hillary Clinton and liked Joe Biden, especially at that point in his presidency. So I just don't.
So Krystal Ball believes that these progressive candidates should have to change who they are in order to win people in their district. This is a big problem with the progressive movement. It's not even as fiery as it was before. It's been watered down. She said nothing in reference to Nina Turner wanting to work with Bakari Sellers. Bakari Sellers, let's remember, he heavily criticized Bernie Sanders' campaigns. Why in the world, and I called this out during her first campaign, why in the world would Nina Turner decide to go work with him, who was sitting up there criticizing against the same politician that she was trying to get elected as president in this country? But see, Krystal Ball is letting you know right now that's okay. See, she's willing to give that a pass. How far do we go as leftists, as progressives, as Marxists, as socialists? How far do we go to the point that we are okay with accepting the establishment just so we can possibly win? Where's the morality? Where is the fine line? So this was very key to me, because what this told me is that Krystal was okay with them doing whatever they needed to do to win. And Nina still lost.
I just don't buy into that political analysis in that district. But I don't want to get sidetracked with that, because the broader question is will it be harder to consolidate the left this time around? Yes, I think it will be. On the other hand, look at how when Joe Biden did like the bare minimum on student loan debt, there are a lot of people who are so excited, you know, like Dark Brandon memes and the whole bit. It was like, oh my God, like they were just looking for someone to actually do something. The JB Pritzker fanfic is a good example of this as well, because it was like, he hasn't done anything all that crazy amazing as governor of Illinois, but he just like ran on a few good things and then actually delivered on it. And the bar is so low that people are like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I have faith that if you did have a Marianne or someone else who was sort of broadly acceptable to the left, albeit with some, you know, disagreements here or there, that you could see a similar galvanizing, like rallying around this person as a clear alternative to the Democratic establishment. And
I disagree. There's 2 points here I want to capture here. One thing that Krystal Ball says is that there are all these people excited. Oh, what people? Who are the people that were excited? Because I sure as hell wasn't one of them. I told you guys that $10,000, $20,000, that does really nothing for me. For a lot of us that went to grad school, then who are the people she's talking about? This is and CJ frames this so well. This is the problem with the PMCs, with the professional managerial class. I would really like to see them get out of their class bubble and actually talk to people who are working class and poor. And don't come back and tell me they talk to labor unionizers. I'm not talking about people trying to start a union. I'm not talking about people who joined a union. I'm talking about people like Krystal Ball having that conversation with working class people and poor people, not because of what they're trying to do on the labor front, but just to get a sense of what they need in their community. This is important. It's not done. And I think that's why she has the views and the beliefs that she's had. Who is she talking to? Seriously. I don't know, man. The left is in trouble. If this is the ideology, the left has some problems.
I just also want to say regarding the Forward Party, I don't think that this is like a serious threat from a left perspective, just based on, and you know, I say this with respect as someone who's known Andrew even from before he ran for president and consider him a friend and all of those things, but you know, clearly aligned with these very like corporate friendly types. He's taking corporate money. They don't.
A lot of people are aligned with corporate friendly types. Krystal is aligned with corporate friendly types. What does Forward Party have to do with the question at hand, which is being asked, which is someone coming to take that Bernie Sanders mantle and run for president? And if so, who is that person going to be? And will they have a real shot? That's what the conversation is about. Forward Party has already explained multiple times, and I've had people come on the show and discuss Forward Party. They've explained multiple times that with their party in particular, it operates more like a caucus than it does a political party. That's why someone who's Republican, Democrat, or independent can run and say they're part of the Forward Party. But the number one idea that they are focusing on right now is ranked choice voting. That's a little bit of a different situation. Bree is particularly talking to her about the progressives, the people coming to take on Bernie Sanders, that Bernie Sanders lane. And I feel like Krystal is she's kind of shifting here as to point out, let me point out all these other, parties or movements that I know are not going to work, because I feel like she can't really answer this question. If Krystal Ball seriously believes that Marianne Williamson is going to be that challenge, is going to be that person to take on that Bernie Sanders mantle and really resonate with working class people, she is sadly mistaken. Marianne Williamson is not working class. I'm sorry. I'll say it again. Again, she's been on this show multiple times. But why does Krystal believe that someone who is a millionaire, someone who is friends with Oprah Winfrey, is going to be able to resonate to working class and poor people in this country? If you want to do that strategy and you want to appeal to that group, why isn't Krystal trying to push someone who is part of the working class, who comes from the working class, who knows what it's like to struggle? Instead, Krystal's trying to push her friend, which I do want to point out. Where was this energy? Where was this enthusiasm about Marianne Williamson when she ran for president in 2020? Where was it? Somebody tell me. Because if I remember correctly, I remember people like Krystal Ball and Kyle Kulinski saying that they thought Marianne Williamson was a little cuckoo. That's what I remember. So why is it now all of a sudden, yay, she's the perfect prime candidate? Where did this come from? Sabby doesn't forget these things.
Have a platform, stand for any issues outside of ranked choice voting, which I very much support, and I hope that they get that done. But as a real sort of like potential place where lefty voters would go, I just don't see that as being likely.
Well, I mean, so there's a couple of things there. One is that what I've heard from people when asked about folks like, let's say, Senator Turner, and I do think that that example is instructive because it taught people a lesson about the Democratic Party more than it taught people a lesson about Senator Turner. I don't think it's a lack of confidence in her as a person as much as it is in the possibility of being successful as a leftist in that space. And so people will say things like, if I lived in Cleveland, I would have voted for her. If someone like her, Marianne, were to run on a national level, I would vote for them. However, I would not devote the same personal resources, time, energy, and money into the race as I did with Bernie Sanders, because I'm not sufficiently confident that the Democratic Party wouldn't invest more resources, which it obviously has more of, in defeating them.
And not to mention, and I'm one of those people that donated a lot of money, and not to mention, I'm not confident in the fact that even if they were to win, they would do what they said they were going to do. We've seen those disappointments with the squad. We've seen those disappointments with even Bernie Sanders sitting up here making all these excuses for Joe Biden and applauding him and saying us, even when he was polling very low, telling people that Joe Biden's doing a good job. I mean, when it comes to the resources, when it comes to donations, and let's be real, as a candidate, you do need the money, right? You need the donations. You're not convincing me to donate money to another progressive again. I'm not donating money to any politicians again. Never. I can't do it, because look at the disappointment that's come from it. All the people that I saw give their last $5, their last $10 to Bernie Sanders because they believed that he was actually going to fight for working class people. Those people aren't just disappointed with Bernie Sanders. Those people were also broke, and they gave their last to him. So I'm not going back to those people again and telling them, oh, yes, you should vote for this progressive running for president because this time we have a better chance of winning. I'm not going to go ask those people for money again. And neither should you. That is a shame. An absolute shame. And again, I don't know, maybe this is a class issue. Some of us can afford to lose a couple of bucks and some people cannot. But if you can't get the money, if you can't get it on the grassroots level, then you're going to have to take it from corporations, but you're not supposed to do that if you're progressive, right? So this is a big concern. And I think that Bree has a good point here to bring this up because I told you guys, they're not getting any more money from me.
Since we do have this working class movement and somebody's $27 is a much harder hit than AIPAC's 2.7 million, that's a calculation people are doing. And they want some proof that either something different is going to happen this time. And now we've got all of these cases of people trying to run inside and it not working. Or alternatively, that someone is going to show the chutzpah to run outside of the context of the Democratic Party, which might be, it's going to be certainly even a harder, heavier lift, but demonstrates the kind of bravery that would make people invest even if they don't have a lot to give.
So I don't have any hostility to third parties. I just think as long as we have, the political system that we do, it is much more likely, as much as I acknowledge all the obstacles within the Democratic Party to find success there, than it is to find success starting from scratch as a third party candidate. I mean,
okay. And this hits the nail on the head because this is Krystal Ball right here letting you know that she is not willing to try the difficult option or the more difficult option. And I pointed this out on Twitter. This is Krystal Ball admitting to you, this is a mask off moment, that she is not willing to try the more difficult option. This is the part I was telling you about the Reformist. They are only willing to go so far. That's not someone I want on my team. When I tell you that we need to do mutual aid, we need to do more direct action. When I tell you I just got back from Camp Dot, I learned a lot from activists across this country that we need to work with people in our communities and see what the needs are of people in the community and help each other. That's where my focus is, top of the list. This whole thing of, oh, who's going to run for president and we should support this candidate. No, that's not the same for me anymore as it was before. And it's because of people like Bernie Sanders. And it's because of people like the Squad and the fact that the Democratic Party is never going to allow them to win. And we need to address that. And we need to talk about that. We need to talk about the fact that here is Krystal telling you she's still willing to go through this same system of putting progressive through the Democratic Party, at least especially for the presidency, knowing that the DNC is going to make it so that they do not win, whether they do it by smear campaigns through the mainstream media, whether they do it by a phone call from Barack Obama, hello, and telling candidates to drop out, or whether they just change the rules middle of the Democratic primary debates, little things like that. So knowing that they're doing all of those things, you mean to tell me you still want to try to do that strategy, knowing the game is rigged against you? It's against you. At least if I vote third party, at least if I vote independent, do you think my hopes are up high that yes, they're definitely going to win? If you do, then you don't understand the strategy. The strategy is not necessarily for them to win. The strategy is to take votes away from people like Joe Biden, to take votes away from the Democratic Party. That is the strategy. To shake this system up and wake people up. This is why it would have been great if Jesse Ventura had ran in 2020. Shake the fuck out of them. This is why they were afraid of someone like Jill Stein. They were more afraid of Jill Stein than they were of Bernie Sanders. Because Bernie Sanders was still running through the Democratic Party, and they knew at the end of the day he would play ball. So what does that tell you about the system? If you say that third parties are not considered a viable option, okay. What does that tell you about the system that we have in the country? What does that tell you? And you still want to play this game?
We have first past the post voting. It basically forces us into this two-party system. And that's the reality we face today. So as much as there were a million obstacles in Bernie's way, he still came a hell of a lot closer than even the best third-party candidates have, in our modern political system. So
what do you mean he came a hell of a lot closer? He lost twice in a row, Krystal. Bernie should have won. I don't accept this talking point that Bernie became close. He was close. No, I don't accept that. Because when I talk to people about who they were going to vote for, and I talk to people about the issues, when I look at the exit polls, that tells me that Bernie Sanders should have won. So it's not good enough for me that he came close. Now, why didn't he win? Because the Democratic Party, the party he was running through, went against him. So why are you still trying to be part of a party that don't want you, boo? I don't get it. You guys need to understand this. I want to say this again very clearly. It is not enough that Bernie came close. Bernie Sanders should have won. That is the problem.
That's number one. Number two is, I think there is something hopeful to point to right now. And in the student loan debt relief, the other part of this that's very encouraging is this was an idea that was really born of Occupy Wall Street, right? So it starts with Occupy, starts with the left, it gets picked up by the Sanders campaign, gets pushed into 2016, gets pushed in 2020.
By Jill Stein.
And I have to pause it here for a second because I can't show John Oliver, but Bree is correct there. For people who may not remember, it was actually Jill Stein. And Krystal mentions Occupy Wall Street and how that moved into the Bernie Sanders campaign. I've been seeing this happen for a while where the Democratic Party will take ideas and issues from third parties, particularly the Green Party, and they'll water it down. And I'll give you another example. The Green New Deal. For those who are not aware, the Green New Deal came from the Green Party. The Democratic Party, the progressives in the Democratic Party, people like AOC and Ed Markey, they took that idea, watered it down, and decided to make it a Democrat Party policy. Don't believe me? Look it up. Because a lot of people I've talked to don't realize that. That was a Green Party platform. They took it, watered it down. Occupy movement was amazing until it went into a freaking presidential campaign in the Democratic Party. And it was watered down. And this is what happens, and I've seen it time and time again, when the Democratic Party, they take these issues, they take these policies, they get a hold of it, and they water it down. They co-opt it. They're doing the same thing with the term progressive.
Saw fit to do for Wall Street not that long ago. It was about $4 trillion in free money in the form of so-called quantitative easing, which is a magic trick that basically people don't need to understand any more about than that it is a magic trick.
No. Again, got to skip past John. I can't play him. Sorry. It's not a me thing. It's a YouTube thing.
So absolutely. So, you have this idea that comes really out of the left, is adopted by Bernie Sanders running in the Democratic primary. Joe Biden is forced. He doesn't want to take this position. He's forced into taking this position in the Democratic primary, but he says it really clearly. And then he's completely reluctant to do it as president. But again, because he had made that promise so clearly, and because there was a very clear electoral ramification staring them in the face for not delivering, he's again forced into actually making good on that. So I just offer.
He was forced because of the progressive. No, Joe Biden implemented that, and it was weak as fuck. He implemented that student loan cancellation of $10K to $20K, not because he was forced by the progressives, but because his poll numbers were so damn low. Democrats were on track to lose the midterms. That's why he did it. Let's be real. Let's call it all out. Let's call it all out here.
That is a hopeful example that it's not all impossible. Like, yes, we recognize this is insufficient and that there's a lot more to do, But in some ways, the fact that Joe Biden is like such an enemy of these ideas and over the 50 years of his career has been on the complete wrong side of all of them. But still, by the pressure of like the left movements over time and the Sanders campaign really popularizing this idea in the Democratic primary, this is forced upon even one of like the the villains in the Democratic Party. So
she really believes he was forced to do this. Like she really, I don't buy it. I really don't buy that she is this naive. I really don't.
To me, that's a very hopeful thing. And I just don't see, as I'm a huge supporter of the labor movement. I think it makes a lot of sense to invest a lot of time, energy, effort, everything we can into that. But you have to have both. You have to have electoral strategy. You have to have the, labor organizing that helps create sort of grassroots democracy, and the two things then build and feed on each other.
There's something I got to add about the you have to have both part. And I mentioned this on RBN as well. She mentions the inside strategy through the Democratic Party and labor organizing. Particularly, I believe she's talking about the unions because she talks about that a lot. And I have to say this again, because I may have new viewers this time around than we were on RBN. And I have to say, when you talk about the labor organizers, there is a particular group that is left out of that. And that's people who cannot work. That's people who are disabled, people who receive disability payments. My mom is disabled. My mom cannot work. So my mom receives a disability check. And so she applauds like all the labor unionizing. She's like, yeah, they're fighting the good fight, but that don't really help my mom. You see what I'm saying? That don't really help her. She doesn't get to benefit from that. When it comes to electoral politics, this inside strategy, that hasn't helped my mom either. And I don't want us to forget about these groups. We need to stop forgetting about people who are poor. We need to stop forgetting about the disabled community in this country, which a lot of times I feel are the most forgotten. They are excluded from multiple things. I just saw a post from Savage Joy earlier where she was going to a concert at Madison Square Garden and there was no, disability access, and that she had to walk up the stairs with her cane. It's things like that people just don't think about, right? So you can't forget about those groups. So how are we going to help those people in particular? Because it's not happening through electoral politics. And I also don't see that happening through labor organizing through unions either. We need to talk about that.
So I think another way to characterize your framing just there, which I think is accurate about what caused Biden to eventually bend the knee. And I do just also want to be clear that he still has not fulfilled the totality of his campaign promise. He promised to cancel all student loan debt for graduates of HBCUs and public universities making under $125,000.
That's right.
Per year. And a lot of HBCU graduates and an enormous number of public university graduates haven't forgotten that particular promise. But the reason why he was under pressure is because there were grassroots leaders who did all the door knocking, who won Georgia, who are disproportionately Black females burdened by student debt, who have been telling the administration that there are real electoral consequences at stake here. And I would argue that if it is the fear that you might lose, if it is the fear that midterms are going to be an even bigger bloodbath, if it's electoral consequences that are ultimately moving Biden's hand, it's not clear to me that it makes sense to say that a third party candidate with the power to, yes, have the spoiler effect isn't exactly what's necessary to get the best outcome, especially when you're talking about you're weighing the pressure of a third party campaign and getting Biden to come to the table and do what he needs to do against an insider run for presidency, which I would love to be effective, but we've now seen Bernie Sanders, a preternaturally capable candidate, better positioned than almost anyone I can imagine. Certainly anybody else that I could be thinking of right now in this historical moment, still trying, beating out everybody in fundraising and losing. And I really take the point that there is a certain impossibility to the idea of running as an outsider.
I just want to add something here to the part where Bree says taking all that money from people and losing. Bernie Sanders received what I think last time I checked was over $100 million from us, and he lost. Imagine if we put that money into mutual aid organizations instead. We could have helped people immediately in this country instead of putting it through an electoral campaign and hoping that that person wins and then hoping that they'll do the right thing. All that money gone, wasted. What did it go to? Where did it end up? Let's ask Bernie. Why do I have establishment Democrats sending me emails and texting me, people that I never supported, people that I never donated to? Did Bernie give them his list? I wonder.
But only if you think of the only gain being getting into 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. If you think leverage.
But let me say though, even on this student, just if we focus on student debt, why did Biden take that position in the primary? It's because he was going to lose the primary if he didn't. I mean, that's where the pressure came from that forced him into that position, is the fact that you have Bernie Sanders having run in 2016 and Bernie Sanders having run in 2020.
And he still lied about it, Krystal. He still didn't do what he said he was going to do when it came to student loan debt. He still lied about that. Let's be real here, guys. And I showed this on my show last week. I went back to the website. He promised to cancel all of it for people making under $125,000. So he still didn't do what he said he was going to do.
And in the Democratic primary, forcing this issue on the table and forcing him to take a position that he doesn't want to take. So even in that example of the student loan debt relief, it mattered to be on that stage, pressuring him directly. Joe Biden didn't care what Jill Stein or, the Green Party was saying. He was forced into that position because of what was happening in the Democratic primary.
No, Krystal. And you think that Joe Biden actually cared what Bernie Sanders was saying too? Because Bernie Sanders walked back his own policy, his own issues, and Bernie Sanders caved into what the establishment Democrats wanted. It really hasn't been the other way around. It hasn't been the establishment, the corporate Democrats saying, okay, we're going to bend to what the progressives want. It's been the progressives who have gone to DC that have decided to bend to what the corporate Democrats want. That's why they agreed to give the money to Ukraine. This is why they would not force the vote. This is why anytime they had a chance where their vote actually was some type of leverage and they could actually push back with their vote, they chose not to do it, or they voted present. So come on. I don't buy it.
It's an interesting question whether or not Bernie Sanders, had he gone rogue in 2016 or gone rogue in 2020, whether he would have had a greater or lesser effect. And I think that before Bernie lost in 2020, the arguments against third parties and people operating outside of the Democratic Party were a lot stronger. In a world where we had such a capable candidate that still was derailed, all of the kind of like, this is the serious person's way to do it kind of arguments, all of the, you just got to do it within the Democratic Party arguments, they lost a lot of teeth as far as I'm concerned. You have to be able to show, and look, I adore Marianne, but it is going to be, it is almost as difficult to imagine a real victory there in the same way as it is difficult to imagine a victory by any of the third party candidates that I've admired and voted for.
I don't agree with that.
Or even a Bernie 2016. Tell me why.
I don't agree with that at all, because we have the historical record. Like, Bernie came very close twice. We don't have a.
Bernie came very close twice and lost, Krystal. Do you guys see? This is the pushback that I have. Why do you keep saying Bernie Sanders came close? Bernie Sanders ran twice in a row. Bernie Sanders should have won in 2016, and Bernie Sanders should have won in 2020. He did not, because the game was rigged against him, because of the DNC, because of the Democratic Party. Let's be real. It's not like when Bernie Sanders was running against Hillary Clinton, she beat him by a landslide. It was close, right? And some would argue that when it came down to the super delegates, Bernie was not treated fairly. So what are you talking about? Look at the exit polls, Krystal. Look at the polls. Even people who were not Democrats, and I talked to conservatives, even some conservatives agreed on Medicare for all. So no, it's not enough that he came close. He should have won. The game is rigged.
Third party who came very close in modern history. So, I mean, Ross Perot was the best example. And, you know, even since that time, sort of things have changed. And also he was like, you know, fairly like in a lot of ways corporate friendly. As a different situation. But we have the record of Bernie coming quite close. And I'm not interested in like raising an awareness, or I shouldn't say that. I am.
No, listen to that. This is a little revealing.
Time sort of things have changed. And also he was like, you know, fairly like in a lot of ways corporate friendly. As a different situation. But we have the record of Bernie coming quite close. And I'm not interested in like raising an awareness, or I shouldn't say that. I am interested in the idea of raising awareness around issues.
I think she had it right the first time. Whoops.
Interested in actually winning the presidency and the powers that that entails, because we do see.
You see, this is her whole goal. This is her goal right here.
Awareness, or I shouldn't say that. I am interested in the idea of raising awareness around issues. I'm more interested in actually winning the presidency and the powers that that entails, because we do see that when even a Joe Biden decides he wants to move, there's tremendous powers in that office. We saw that also.
She just let you know her interest is winning the presidency. That's her interest. Now, if that's her interest, why would she be pushing someone like Marianne Williamson? Marianne Williamson is awful on foreign policy. Now, some of you may think, why is that important? Why does that matter? And as I've told you multiple times on this show, international issues, foreign policy should also be domestic policy. We need to pay attention to what is happening abroad, because most of the times we're the cause of the conflict. So if you have a president who is not good on foreign policy issues, who is using talking points where they are coming across like a Zionist, where they are not understanding the conflict that is going on between Israelis and Palestinians, when they are not understanding that it's not about protecting the women and children in reference to Afghanistan, that it was about opium, that it was about resources. When you don't understand that, and when multiple people have tried to chime in and educate you and explain to you why you are incorrect on these issues in particular, and you want to be president, that is incredibly dangerous. Because when it comes to foreign policy, that is one policy that the president can move on their own, and they do not always have to get approval from Congress to do so. I'll give you an example. When you have people like Joe Biden, who's sitting up here and he's attacking people in Somalia, the sanctions on Afghanistan, he does not need approval of Congress to do that. If he wants to do drone strikes and things like, he doesn't need their approval. You see the problem? So when it comes to an issue like foreign policy, you got to be spot on for me. You can't be weak. You can't be milquetoast on that issue. You have to be spot on. You have to understand the conflicts that are going on in that country. And if that means that you need to talk to people who are journalists that have been there, that have reported there, that have investigated these issues, then so be it. But educate yourself. But you can't just use these talking points that say it's for the women and the children, and you have no idea about what the conflict is actually about and what is happening to the people. If it was about the women and the children, we wouldn't kill innocent women and children, God damn it. I'm sorry, but it needs to be called out. So for me, no, it's not enough. It's not okay for you to be a Zionist and you're progressive. That's not enough for me. If you're against the Palestinians, not feeling you. Keeping it real. I don't care if you call yourself progressive, leftist, Marxist, whatever you want to call yourself today. Where you stand on those issues, where you stand on imperialism, where you stand on war, that says a lot for me. And if you can't pass those two tests, you're not getting my support. And you shouldn't give them yours either. I think we need to redefine what it means to be progressive. I think we need to really investigate that and look back on that again. Because I think that that's been lost. And one more point I want to add before I go to the comments. I tell you guys that when it comes to electoral politics, we need to put more focus on the local level because that's where you can implement the most change when it comes to electoral politics. I've seen it happen in Massachusetts. The problem that I think the left is going to run into in reference to the presidency and running a progressive, a lot of the issues that Bernie Sanders has run on has already been implemented on the local level. I'm going to use my state for an example. Massachusetts. There are good things and bad things about Massachusetts. But when I look at some of these progressive issues, Fight for 15, Massachusetts implemented that years ago. Not done on the federal level, but we already have it. We've had it this has been years. Legalizing marijuana. Massachusetts implemented that years ago. We have cannabis shops and they continue to multiply across the state and they're bringing in a lot of money. Paid maternity leave, paid family leave. Guess what? Massachusetts implemented that last year. And it's not just us. There's other states who have implemented these policies as well. So here is the concern that I have. And you guys know I'm done with the duopoly, but for those of you who do want to do the inside strategy on the federal level, when we're talking about the presidency, some of these issues that Bernie Sanders was fighting for, because they've already been implemented on the state level, is it going to have as much appeal when someone like Bernie runs for president again in 2024, 2028? We need to ask this question because I'll be honest with you, people here in Massachusetts can easily say, yeah, I mean, the progressive candidate seems like the better option, but to be fair, we already have the Fight for 15. We already have marijuana legalization. We already have paid family leave. I think progressives really need to think about that. And I don't think I've talked about this before because it kind of hit me today. But I mean, of course, I think everyone should have those policies implemented. But at the same time, if you don't care about it like as much as I do, will you necessarily feel that desire and that urge to go support that candidate? You already got yours, and that is an American mindset. Is it going to have as much weight come 2024 and 2028 when you already have states implementing it? Something to think about.